morning. Hello and welcome to all the viewers of Headlines today. This is a special broadcast you're watching live from Kathmandu, the capital city of beautiful Nepal. Remember, Kathmandu is of course hosting the 18th SAARC summit here. It was day one of the SAARC summit. We will be of course discussing about the outcomes of day one at the summit here. I have a special panel with me. Kathmandu Dikshit, he's the editor for Himal South Asia, somebody who's very well known in Nepal. Also Mr. Hiresh Tripathi, who's the former physical connectivity and transport member of Nepal. In fact, you do not see really the city setup here as far as my guests are concerned, but there is the traditional Nepali mandap right behind them, because we thought you should also get a glimpse as far as Nepal's culture is concerned. But really, turning back of course to that big story, the 18th SAARC summit which kicked off in Kathmandu City Hall. The 8 member nations of the SAARC grouping there, delivering their keynote addresses, of course, at the plenary session. Narendra Modi recalled the horrific Mumbai attacks of 26/11. Remember, this is the 6th anniversary of the 26/11 attacks that claimed several innocent lives. Though he was brief as far as the issue of terrorism was concerned, his focus largely being the issues of commerce and connectivity. But terrorism, of course, did remain a key theme as far as the speeches of the other heads of states was concerned.
A day etched indelibly on India's collective psyche. Anniversary of 26/11 attacks set the stage for Modi's SAARC speech, and the Prime Minister put across India's concern forcefully.
Today, as we remember the horror of the terror attack in Mumbai in 2008, we feel the endless pain of loss of lives.
As leaders highlighted the challenges posed by new forms of terrorism, Modi and Sharif sat with an almost cold gaze, not even acknowledging each other's presence.
We earnestly hope that old and new democracies in South Asia will join hands to make our region peaceful and prosperous.
There was no direct reference to cross-border terror, but heads of SAARC nations made key mentions of the menace.
Terrorism still remains a fundamental security challenge, both regionally and internationally.
Collapse or failure of states results in emergence of ungoverned spaces that provide the breeding ground for criminal enterprises and networks of violence to form symbiotic relationships.
Indo-Pak ties meanwhile turned even more frosty. With no structured meet planned with Nawaz, Modi went ahead with his bilateral meetings.
For a regional grouping that framed the Convention on Terrorism way back in 1987, even much ahead of the UN that did so in 2001, the fight against extremism and terrorism in South Asia is far from won. And despite their verbal assurances and claims, for some in SAARC, this battle is only a half-hearted one. With video journalist Alok Bhatnagar here in Kathmandu, this is Smita Sharma for Headlines Today. So when you look at all the member states of SAARC, really, from Afghanistan to Sri Lanka to Bangladesh to India, SAARC nations have really long suffered because of terrorism. That did remain the key theme there for many of the leaders who delivered their addresses at the plenary session. So after all these years, does SAARC really, still need to come out with some sort of a concrete plan to deal with the issue of terrorism? Can SAARC really take off with so much of focus on the 3 C's, communication, connectivity, commerce? Can this really be implemented in a way until and unless the issue of terrorism is dealt with? Jyoti, to begin with you, do you still get this feeling that really, as far as the South Asian countries are concerned, the biggest impediment still remains that your economics cannot happen unless the terror situation is dealt with?
Smita, I would like to start by saying that I think Prime Minister Narendra Modi did have a very impressive speech this morning. He spoke beautifully and basically sent the message to the entire region that India wants to reach out and do a lot of work, especially in terms of economic integration, regional integration, and that India is willing to put its money where its mouth is. I think that message was very clear.
Right.
Your question on whether any of this can happen if and unless terrorism is resolved. I think it's a chicken and egg kind of question, in the sense that how long. I think all SAARC nations for years and years have been a victim of terrorism,
right,
whether it's Nepal, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, all across, even tiny Maldives. Now, should we first eliminate the scourge of terror and only then shall we start integrating regionally, economically? I think we can do both these issues. We can have parallel tracks, several tracks, multiple tracks. So I don't think one should precede the other. I think you must work jointly on terror, but at the same time, you must do regional connectivity, you must do regional transport, you must do regional a lot of regional issues. And I think that was Prime Minister Modi's message.
You mean to say that there has to be a simultaneous approach. But Kanak, really, if you look at Dr. Ghani's speech again, there he talks about how there is overt terrorism, there is covert terrorism, about terrorism being used as an instrument of policy. Perhaps the biggest problem for South Asia is this trust factor. If you have neighbors that you cannot trust, how do you move ahead, really?
I agree with Jyoti. I don't think you can have trust unless you build economic stakeholders across borders. So if the odd terrorist attack, because we really have to call it the odd terrorist attack, the media coverage is a lot, but it does, in fact, the citizens of Pakistan on a day-to-day level are suffering much more from terror attacks than the rest of the subcontinent. And then you also, of course, have to add Afghanistan. So Ashraf Ghani is just entered office, and I think for him this is a very important position to take vis-a-vis the challenges that Afghanistan faces. But this is the point I'd like to make. One is terror attacks sometimes are used as an excuse to derail dialogue, number one. Right. Number two, if the countries of South Asia, including India, realize that a lot is banking upon connectivity, because you need to uplift the poorest of the poor of North India, you need to have connectivity with Bangladesh, Nepal and Pakistan. So for that to happen, you must try and build, and this is why the focus in this particular summit, I believe, was connectivity even more than terror, is that when you develop infrastructural linkages and you develop connectivity and stakeholding among the commercial and business and people on both sides, then you lift the economies. Also, when there is a terror attack, everything doesn't break down for another 5 years.
So, but Hideshji, you've dealt with the issue of connectivity really very closely here. Now, for a country like Nepal, or for a country like Bangladesh, where these countries in the past have been accused of harboring terrorists who have acted against India's interests. Despite that, India has made progress bilaterally with these countries. So, is there like something different which is happening with Nepal, with Bangladesh, or when it comes to, India and Pakistan, really connectivity, how do you see it happening here?
As far as the connectivity is concerned in our issue, we have bilateral agreements. Just we had yesterday only, and unfortunately SAARC was not prepared because of the lack of Pakistani delegation. They have not completed their homework to sign two agreements. But there is no alternative of connectivity. It is a very wrong notion that connectivity brings the terrorism and the thing. Connectivity brings people together, and it will fight the terrorism if the proper connectivity is there.
So you're saying connectivity perhaps brings people together, keeps the window of opportunity open, as Kanak mentioned, even when there is a terror attack, for at least relationships do not get completely derailed. But in the case of India and Pakistan, it doesn't seem to be the case. There is that big question, will there at least be an informal chit-chat between Narendra Modi and Nawaz Sharif when they go into retreat in Dhulikhel tomorrow? This question we'll ask to our guests, of course.